Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Today I want to talk about my table saw, and in particular I want to talk about the blade on it. I've actually have never had a kickback on this table saw since I did what I consider the most important thing I could have done to prevent kickbacks and boards binding and things like that. And believe it or not, it's a simple solution, and it saves you money and makes cutting more safe on your table saw all the way around. And that is, I stopped using my 10-inch circular saw blade, and I now use a 7¼ inch blade on there, and I find that it is so much better. So let's talk about this for a moment, and let's start with the size dimensions of them. 10 inches, 7¼ obvious difference. So that's going to affect the depth of cut. So what is the difference between the two is 2 3/4 inches, which is the difference in the cut is going to be 1 3/8 difference. The 10-inch blade cuts at close to 3 inches, and this one cuts right at a little over 1 3/4 inches in depth of cut. And you say, well, see, there's why I don't use it, the depth of cut. Well, think about it, 1 3/4 inches. That's deep enough for virtually anything I ever cut on my table saw anyway, 99% of the time. And I assume that probably yours too. And so, what are you cutting? I'm cutting 2x material. I can do that all in one pass on this blade still. If I'm cutting 4x4s, I have to flip it anyway, even with the bigger blade. But I can do it with this blade, and the cuts are going to be so much easier and much easier to cut. And why is that? That's because the other difference between these two blades is not only the diameter, but it's the thickness. If you take this blade, the 7¼ blade is only 1/16 of an inch thick, and its normal table saw blade is 1/8 inch thick. And so the difference there is you're hogging out material and cutting a kerf through a piece of wood, just plowing through it. When you're cutting an 1/8 inch wide out, it's going to take it's going to be a lot more aggressive and harder to have to do that than with a 1/16 of an inch cut. And so that blade inherently, your work is going to work so much smoother. So that's the big differences between the two. And when you say the depth of cut, well, it doesn't really make any difference in 99% of the work you're going to do on the table saw. Anything over 3½ inches thick, chances are I'm going to do it on the bandsaw anyway instead of on the table saw. I don't like to cut anything too thick on that table saw anyway. So the depth of cut is just a fallacy, and that's the first argument I always hear out of everybody's mouth when they say, why the 10-inch blade? Then they talk about the speed. Oh my God, it's going so much faster. Well, yeah, it is. Technically, it's not. It's still the same RPM. But it feels like it's cutting faster. And that's an advantage, really, when you think about it, on a saw. And with the 1/16 inch kerf, it just makes it cut so easy. You can bring in, for example, it makes all your cuts feel like you're cutting through butter almost. I have taken more than once a wet piece of pressure-treated wood, brought it in, throw it on the table saw, and rip it. And it's wet, and you can see the water oozing out of it as you're cutting along the cut line. And the thing will go like butter right through there. I'll do a cut on a wet piece of 2x4 for you and kind of show you how easily it goes through. And hopefully I can convey that just by you watching. I can't let you do the cut. My insurance won't allow me to let you do it, so I'll have to do the actual cut. Nothing personal, but I'll show you that. And I'm also going to show you a new trick. One of the advantages to my small blade is when I do resaw now on wider material, and I almost always will cut it on here first on edge, and I run it through on all 4 edges to give me a kerf line. And then when I take it over to the bandsaw, it makes it so much easier. I don't even have to use my fence or anything. I can just follow it right down through there, and the blade will track down on that kerf and cut the rest of the way through to make your resawing so easy. So it's a great tool to have, and you're only cutting that 1/16 inch kerf instead of an 1/8 inch kerf for that bandsaw blade. And so it just makes everything more efficient. So that's a very nice additive that this thing does. Well, let's go over real quick because I may have missed something. I actually wrote a quick list here. And we're going to kind of look at this. And let's see where we're at with that. So the differences between the two blades. Let me zoom in here just a little bit. So hopefully you can see that. And I talked about the cons, the depth of cut. And we've already figured out that the depth of cut isn't as important. The difference between them doesn't really make any difference for 99% of your cuts. Cheaper blades. These blades, you go anywhere and you try to buy a 10-inch table saw blade. If you pay less than $45 for it, you might as well not have even bought it. And if you pay more than that, and that happens quick. The more expensive one you get to get a better blade. This blade came from Harbor Freight. Cost me $8. You can buy those 7¼ inch blades, and I would buy the 24 tooth, and we'll go over that in a second why. But I'd buy the 24 tooth, and that's all I use. You'll find that they'll run you $10 a piece. If you're paying more than $12, you're being foolish. And they do as good a cut and as smooth a cut with a 24 tooth on this blade as I get out of a 60 tooth on a 10-inch blade when I do cuts. So the 24 tooth is all you really need for a saw blade, I found. I've tried the 40 tooth, and I really didn't think it really made much of a difference. And this seems to do a little better on the ripping than that 40 tooth would. So you can try them. It's not like you're going to spend a lot of money. You can try the different ones. But I've always found 24 tooth is more than enough. Like I say, cutting through wet wood and hardwood is so much easier. There really is no... I've never had a kickback, and I've had the board squeezed together after I cut it. And that's usually what causes it, and it binds on the blade. And I've seen that happen a lot with my 10-inch blade. It used to happen every now and then. But since I went to this blade, even when the wood closes back up, it doesn't seem to bind the blade. So I've really almost completely eliminated the binding also. So the thinner curve and less aggressive really makes a difference, especially if you're cutting a lot of small pieces like I do. So that can be a great advantage. Plus, I still can cut the bigger pieces using the same blade without any problem. So it's a win-win. This is some of the main reasons why I really like to do it. And like I said, the other thing is I do fewer blade changes. I take it out, change it out about every 10 months, give or take, and throw the blade away. At $8 a piece, why would I want to sharpen them? So that's kind of where I'm at with this. And this is why I was saying that you want to stop kickback completely, then you should switch that blade out. So let me zoom back out here. So now let's do something here real quick. I'm going to do a couple of real quick cuts and show you what they look like. And hopefully I'll be able to convey to you how easily this thing cuts when you do those cuts. So the first cut I'm going to do, quite simply, is on a wet 2x4. I brought this in last night. This thing weighs a ton, so I know it's wet. We're just going to make sure that we're above the blade, and I'll just take one of my push sticks to push it through, and we're going to push this through, and I think you'll see just how easy this thing really cuts, even 2x4s. And that just cut through there without any resistance. This is if I was cutting a dry piece of wood. And this thing really feels wet. Want to feel? Never mind. Bad joke. So you can see it cuts real good there. But let's do something else. I had this piece here, which is about 5 inches, give or take, wide. And I want to resaw it. I want to take this and cut it down to like a 1/4 inch piece of veneer and use it as a veneer. I can bring this over to my 1/4 inch. Like so. And now let's cut this. And I'm going to flip it over because I want to get 2 pieces out of it. And so what I've done now is I've cut it. I can take it over to the bandsaw, start my blade in here, and cut this off, go back, cut it off through this curve, and I'll end up with 2 1/4-inch pieces of veneer out of this piece of wood. So it makes resawing really easy. And usually I'm going to start it into the blade here, so a lot of times I'll put this end through the blade also, so that it helps me with starting it straight. So three ways around on the curve cuts, and this board is ready to turn into 2 pieces of veneer now. So you can resaw wood really easy. If I take something really heavy, this is a piece of white. This is a piece of ash. Came off of one of my trees here. Very hard wood. I'm going to lower the blade just a little bit because we don't need that strong of a curve. But now I want to cut a 1/2-inch piece off of there. So I'm going to set it for just about a 30-second over that, and let's cut a curve in this. Didn't bind, didn't bog, and it just went right through there nice and smooth. My 3 cut. We're going to go over here. Let's do this cut real quick. And now I have my 1/2-inch thick board. I have a little bit of planing to do on it. So, and I have a 1/2-inch piece out of that board there, and I can do that on any length piece. Let me turn this light off. So you can see that that blade cuts in just the right size curve for me to guide it through my bandsaw. So resawing becomes sweet. And it's no big deal anymore. You used to take that piece and have to hold it and use the fence and push it through, and it would bind and stop, and you get done, the blade might drift. All that went away, and makes resawing boards so much easier than it was. So the dog, I had to give her a treat. So anyway, so there it is in a nutshell. As you can see, that 7 1/4-inch blade works even better than the 10-inch blade. Now the manufacturers all tell you to put a 10-inch blade on there. Now why? Because you can. But you don't have to. Going to a little bit smaller blade, you pick up so many advantages, and the disadvantages are almost none. So give it a try. I challenge you to put that on there for a couple of weeks. Try to do every kind of cut that you can imagine and see, and prove me wrong about this. You'll feel so much more comfortable. The fact that you'll get kickbacks, I've never had one since I did this. So give it a try. I think you'll find that it really works well. Let me know what you think about it. If you try it for a while, come back and leave a comment then. Even though it's a month later or a year later, leave me a comment of what you did find out at that time. I really like to know what other people think. I'm amazed that more people haven't tried to use the 7 1/4-inch blade. But all those myths about it, don't believe them. This is the single best thing you can do to protect yourself against kickback and a lot of other bad things that can happen to you on a table saw. So try the blade out. Let me know what you think about it. Don't forget to like this button if you learned something here, or if you actually liked the video. But most importantly, please come back again, because we're nowhere near done. Thanks. We'll see you again very soon.